Children love dolls, and as a kid I had G.I. Joes, although they were called action figures, but they were dolls. Then, as some of us get older, we sometimes start to look at dolls a little different. In 1970, a Japanese roboticist named Marashiro Mori coined the term the uncanny valley effect to describe the eerie feeling of encountering a human-like robot. Pediophobia is the intense, irrational fear of dolls, including mannequins and puppets. And considering the popularity of evil doll movies, I think a lot of people find dolls kind of creepy. But some, as they get older, still love their dolls, and a few of them have turned this love into nightmares. There's one guy who not too long ago went past all of this, even making Ed Gein seem a little humdrum. Anatoly is a Russian linguist, philologist, and historian who was arrested in 2011 after the mummified bodies of 29 girls between the ages of 3 and 13 were found in his apartment. As a schoolboy, Moskvin began wandering through cemeteries with his friends. He said his interest in the dead came from a childhood incident in which he witnessed a funeral procession of a 11-year-old girl. He says that an adult pushed his face down to her, then forced him to kiss her face. Moskvin had a deep interest in cemeteries, burial rituals, death, and the occult. He kept a personal library of over 60,000 books, as well as a large doll collection. Fellow academics described him as a genius and an eccentric. As an adult, Moskvin led a secluded life. He never married or dated, preferring to live with his parents. He described himself as a necropolist, which isn't really a word. A necropolis, without the T, is a large, elaborate, and often ancient cemetery. The ist denotes a person who practices or specializes in a particular field, like dentist or artist. So necropolis does sort of fit what he was into. He was considered an expert in local cemeteries. After exhuming the bodies from cemeteries, Moskvin mummified them, then dressed and posed them around his home. He would celebrate their birthdays, watch fairy tales with them, and read them books. His parents knew of the dolls, but it didn't occur to them that they were real girls. They even had one of them in their bedroom, which is really disturbing. In an interview after his arrest, Moskvin said that he felt great sympathy for the dead children, and he thought that they could be brought back to life by either science or black magic. As an expert in Celtic culture, he learned that the ancient Druids slept on their graves in order to communicate with spirits of their dead. He would search the obituaries of recently deceased children. When he found one that spoke to him, he would sleep on that child's grave in order to determine if the spirit wished to be brought back to life. Moskvin claimed he had been doing this for around 20 years and insisted that when he began, he never dug up a grave without the permission of the child within. As he grew older, it became physically painful for him to sleep on the graves, so he began bringing the bodies home where it would be more comfortable to sleep near them. He hoped the spirits would be more willing to speak to him within a safe, welcoming home, and that they might be easier to hear when they were no longer underground. After exhuming the corpses, Moskvin researched mummification theories and techniques in an attempt to preserve the bodies. He dried the corpses using a combination of salt and baking soda, then hid the bodies in secure places in and around cemeteries. Once the bodies dried, he carried them to his home where he tried to make them into dolls with functional bodies so they would be able to move around on their own once he discovered a way to bring them back to life. Moskvin felt that if their physical remains were too decayed and ugly, that these dolls would be uncomfortable and unhappy. Unable to prevent the bodies from withering and shrinking as they dried, he would wrap the limbs in strips of cloth and stuff the body cavity with rags and padding to provide fullness. Sometimes he added wax masks before dressing them in clothes and wigs. He was aware that he was committing a crime, but felt the dead children were calling out to him to be rescued. He said he was motivated by his own desire to have children, especially a daughter. He once attempted to adopt a young girl against the wishes of his parents, but his application was declined. Moskvin was arrested in 2011 by police investigating a spate of grave desecrations. Investigators discovered 26 mummified bodies dressed as dolls in his home. He denied any sexual attraction to them. He was charged with the desecration of graves and dead bodies, which carried up to 5 years in prison. After a psychiatric evaluation, it was determined that Moskvin had a form of paranoid schizophrenia. He was deemed unfit to stand trial, which released him from criminal liability. Instead, in 2012, he was sentenced to coercive medical measures and a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation. He has since been held in a psychiatric hospital. A lot of us love the horror genre, but when I come across a story like Moskvin's, it just fascinates me past just morbid curiosity. The guy was educated and could function in society with a good job. And how many people like him, as like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, or Elizabeth Bathory and Lizzie Borden, or the Bloody Benders and Val Guinness, are never found out. They are definitely out there, contributing to all those missing people and unsolved murders. Maybe one is sitting in the cubicle next to us, or talking about sports at a family gathering, or delivering our Uber Eats. The most boring people can sometimes have the most interesting lives in the best and worst ways. And I find that the people who do the most horrific stuff, the most intriguing, although I hope to never encounter them. Good night.